Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Monday. I do hope you have a peaceful and happy Monday. Thank you so much for being here early. I'm on time, on the dot. Hi, Peter. Hello. Hi, Steven. Where has today gone? Yeah, right? Right. And where yeah, today and the weekend, and it just goes too fast. Maybe it's a thing that sort of lets us know that we're having fun, right? Because they say when time flies, you're having fun, or we're just busy. I don't know. Hi, Michael. Hello. Hi, Jared. Hello. Hope you had a good weekend. I did, and I was just watching so many documentaries, and I was putting together the video about the Rarick Museum, which I'm going to talk about towards the end today. And I hope you watched it. And if you haven't, please do so. And I'll tell you about the whole initiative. Yeah. And then Saturday, I was also emailing a lot of embassies and missions and confirming the coverage. I posted it today earlier on Blue Sky and on X, saying everything that we're confirmed, we meaning me, confirmed to cover. And I always refer to us, meaning me and you guys, because I take you with me. And we have so many events, like 27 events during the UN week alone. And this is from Climate Week to Global Citizen to Atlantic Council to UN Diplomatic Lounge to all kinds of events. So whether you are into economy, diplomacy, climate, anything, you'll find something you're interested in. And there will be so many different people, of course, from all over the world. This is the busiest week really in New York, where everybody is here, and also from heads of state to diplomatic missions to all kinds of business leaders and leaders in finance and whatnot. So we're going to have a lot of think tanks, a lot of events that I certainly will personally cover. So long story short, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, because that's where you're going to get more content than what you're getting on the daily basis. When I go live at 5 p.m. Eastern, we're still going to have our news recaps. We'll figure out what time works. I'll try to keep it at 5 to be consistent. But during that week, I'll go live. I'll tell you all about it. And especially when people share ideas that are worth being shared. Because what I feel is, and what I'm honestly very bored with, is talking about tweets and Truth Social posts and same negative old BS that we sort of pretend to be news on the daily, which has nothing to do with news. So, I'm really looking forward to hearing something that will inspire us and spark that curiosity. Michael says, love the Paris orchestra video. I recommend. Oh, thank you. So yes, yesterday I finished my day by watching this Paris orchestra video. It was like a national orchestra concert in Paris, which I think was about a month ago. And that was amazing. So, and then I watched on Saturday about Pierre Trudeau, so Trudeau Sr. and his legacy, which was really eye-opening and very interesting. So if you're not familiar with that, maybe you're not from Canada, I really recommend you to do so. Maybe I'm going to put like a playlist with all the stuff I watch. Maybe some boring people will join me. boring, meaning I think we are exciting. You know, if you didn't watch MTV Music Awards yesterday, then you're in my company. I know there was a lot, like Mariah Carey was there and Ricky Martin performed, and I think Lady Gaga also did, but don't ask me more about it. That's all I got. Now, let's talk about national news. Last night, Trump announced that he's going to host a religious liberty commission today. And if you look at it, who's part of it, like Dr. Phil and this entire Fox News clique, then you kind of know where it's headed. So it really had little to do with religious liberty, which, if you hear Religious Liberty Commission, what do you actually imagine, right? This how it looked like today. You see Pam Bondi's there. Somehow she's also in that Religious Liberty Commission. Actually, she's headlining DOJ. So I don't know. Everything is mixed there. So it's all like praise dear leader, thank him for the air you breathe, and move on, right? And whatever he says, laugh when it's appropriate, cry when it's appropriate, and throw a fist when it's appropriate. So it had nothing to do with religious liberty, right? So President Trump delivered this speech at 10 in the morning today, or 10:10, at that commission gathering. So instead of focusing on the liberty to follow and exercise any type of religion you believe in, he actually centered all of this on one theme: the freedom of religious leaders to openly support Trump without consequences. And so he spoke about Johnson Amendment, which essentially prohibited religious leaders to support political candidates, and if they were to decide to do so, then they would face losing the tax exempt status for their nonprofits, which are those religious institutions. And he started describing the situation where he was seeking their help, and he gathered all of them and said, support me. And they were like, no, we can't. And then he said, why? And then that's how he learned about this Johnson Amendment, which is all BS. Why didn't he know that in the first term? But altogether, he said, look, if you openly support me, then when I'm elected, and if and when, I will change this, and I will put this Johnson Amendment to rest, which essentially he says he did. Once he became elected, he eliminated it. And he said, quote, because you are the people I want to hear from, the religious people, I've given you voices back. So he's sort of reversing the Little Mermaid story, giving them voice, taking away their feet. I don't know. None of it had to do with religion. All of it had to do with follow my leader, leader, leader. You know that song? That's exactly what happened there. And then he spoke about the business of faith and how it's very sort of going alongside the Trump brand. Now, what we did learn beforehand, if you're not subscribed to the writer Michael Wolff, I strongly recommend you to do so. Specifically on Instagram, he posts videos, short videos, where he talks about Epstein, talks about Trump, talks about all those leaders, and he spent years around Epstein to write the book about him. So he says that according to his sources in the West Wing, which is the White House, and very personal part of the White House, he said that Trump last week met with his merge team. That's the hats and the Bibles and the caps and T-shirts and whatever they sell, right? Speaking of Bibles, where they discussed selling Trump-branded crucifix pendants, crosses. And they all were so ecstatic, and they supported his idea to now sell those crosses, both to people and churches and religious institutions. And when somebody full of excitement declared that, yeah, Mr. President, this is fantastic because Christianity sells, Trump stopped, thought about it, according to Michael Wolff, and said, no, Trump sells. I leave you with that. So Then at that gathering today, he also said this, which very much aligns with the Russians' stance on, that Russia legalized essentially beating up your significant others, right? You can't seek any criminal prosecution if you beat up your wife, your husband, whatever. So, alongside those lines, Trump says, um, he claimed that DC, right, has fallen rapidly into a crime infested zone. Then he utilized the National Guard, turned National Gardener, and now the crime is virtually nothing. And then he dismissed reported cases as minor domestic incidents. Quote, things that take place in the home they call crime. They'll do anything they can to find something. If a man has a little fight with the wife, they say, this is a crime. See? That's how he explains that 87% of crime has fallen, apparently, allegedly, according to him and his sources in DC. But there is still a little bit, but all that is domestic abuse, which it's not really crime. Also, the Democratic Oversight Committee, they subpoenaed essentially the Epstein estate, and then the Epstein estate followed the orders and essentially released that infamous now birthday card that Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein to his 50th birthday. Here you are. This is the drawing. We knew what was stated in terms of those voiceover lyrics, so to speak. But now this is the actual drawing, which is kind of, I don't know, do you draw an adult woman like this or rather a small teenage person? I don't know. Anyway, you decide. Now, in other news, NBC today released the statistics. They ran sort of this questionnaire and sort of a poll to realize what Gen Z adults are focused on. So, and what are their preferences are, how would they define a successful life? What would be their priorities, essentially? And maybe, that is not that impressive, but for me, it was stunning first to realize that Gen Z is anybody between 18 and 29 years of age. I'm like, oh, Gen Z is already almost 30? What am I? Okay, so altogether, they did this weird comparison. I wish they would have done it differently, but nevertheless, it's not my poll. So they did compare the preferences and the priorities between men who voted for Trump versus women who voted for Harris, and then men who voted for Harris versus women who voted for Trump. Essentially, their idea was, how can people mix with each other? I think it's a no-brainer to say that it's very difficult to, at this particular moment in time, to mix a liberal woman with a MAGA guy and a MAGA woman with a liberal guy. But here we are. This is what NBC did. So let's explore some of those statistics here. So this is between men who voted for Trump versus women who voted for Harris. For men, the first priority is having children. Meanwhile, for women who voted for Harris, is fulfilling job career. Now, for guys, you see it here, then it goes financial independence, fulfilling job career, being married, having money to do things you want. Meanwhile, on liberal end, for women, it's fulfilling job career, having money to do things you want, having emotional stability, using talents and resources to help others, financial independence, having no debt, owning a home. The last on the list is having children. The last on the list for Trumpers, guys, is having emotional stability, which I honestly, for me, it was such a mind-blowing moment. Like, whoa, very liberal here, me, with this priorities. And the idea for MAGA guys for minority of them to state that this emotional stability is the last on the list, meaning, have you ever done this thing? Like you pick everything and it's just literally something you're totally not interested in, just ends up being last. That explains a lot. That explains a lot. I don't know how you would take it in, but now, if we were to compare now guys who voted for Harris, this is on the right-hand side, and on the left, women who voted for Trump, right? So left Trumpers, right guys who voted for Harris. For women is financial independence, which is very interesting, right? So you see here, having children is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 priority for MAGA women, right? So MAGA women and MAGA guys don't really align here, which kind of explains it, right? Because if you think about it, having children it takes a way bigger toll on women than on guys, right? You can still have family, have children, and continue your career. Well, women have to essentially, maneuver, so to speak, and everybody decides what's right for them. Now, women who voted for Trump: financial independence, fulfilling job, career, owning a home, being grounded spiritually, right? So, that's interesting. Having money to do things you want, then having children, then having no debt. And the last on the list is able to retire early. Meanwhile, guys who voted for Harris: fulfilling job, career, having money to do things you want, using talents and resources to help others, financial independence, having emotional stability. Being children is third from the bottom. So again, what we learned here essentially is that liberal women and men are very much aligned. MAGA men and women are not so aligned on having children. And I think it goes with the MAGA podcast, with the idea that you have to procreate, that you have to, have children. And they put women so low on the list, and women, just women's interests and priorities, and that woman is a person and has life and should have a career and should have a say to begin with, which really is populated by this MAGA podcast to think just the opposite of it, right? The opposite of truth. Jared says the grift is real. Oh, talking about the crucifix. Hi, Brad. I'm still trying to be an astronaut or a firefighter. Good. Right. Well, Trump is trying to be Jesus. So, I think whatever you're doing is more attainable than that. Okay, so we analyzed that. This is in your newsletter. By the way, your newsletter already arrived. Please subscribe. It's free. Get your facts, get your news so you can read it whenever you have time. I know some people like reading, some people like watching, some people like listening, but I think all of us sort of like having facts. So if you are interested, then get your actual news on honestnetwork.com. You can also subscribe on Substack and just get your emails. All right. So as to Russia launched a largest drone attack. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record because every single day it's like the largest. Yeah, it's true, because that stuff gets worse and worse and worse. This time they threw 800 drones in one night with missiles. Now, in this case, we're just talking about Kyiv, which is the capital of the city, of the country, the capital of Ukraine. But other cities were targeted, and people got injured and died everywhere. We just are not talking about everything every day, because otherwise everything would be very, very dark, and I'm trying to be as bright as possible. Look at my t-shirt. Anyway, so my point is, we're talking about Kyiv, but other cities have suffered. Now, Russia carried out largest drone assault since the start of the war on Sunday, right? This was Saturday to Sunday. Volodymyr Zelensky said that he condemned this and called it a deliberate crime and prolongation of the war. Now, what was different? Yes, people got injured. Yes, 5 people died, all civilians. None of those objects were anywhere related to the war or defense. Now, what they did target this time, though, was the main governmental building in Kyiv. If you have ever been there, it's in the middle of the city. It's huge. It has all the offices of the politicians, essentially, right? This is the minister's cabinet building where everybody has their headquarters. That's where they gather. That's where the prime minister works and whatnot. Speaking of prime minister, the new prime minister, Svyridenko, she recorded a video showcasing what went on, essentially showcasing their offices. Watch the video. It has subtitles in English, and then I'm going to tell you also some details about it. Take a look.
Я прем'єр-міністр України Свериденко Юлія знаходжусь тут, в будівлі уряду, де ворог вперше за час повномасштабної війни влучив будівлю уряду в самому центрі міста Києва. Ми бачимо наслідки цієї ворожої атаки. Локалізована пожежа на площі 800 метрів квадратних. Наші рятувальники продовжують тут працювати. І все виглядало таким чином, що Росія не готова і не прагне миру, не готова до перемовин. Тому у мене заклик до наших партнерів. Допоможіть нам закрити небо, давайте підсилимо санкції проти Росії, давайте створимо таку систему гарантій для нашої держави, яка змусить ворога зупинитися.
So she's calling to close the sky. She showed the hallways and what remained there. Now, what we're learning today, though, that actually what Russians did plan had to be very much worse. So Roman Sheremetyev posted the following: a cruise missile Iskander, not a drone, struck the cabinet of ministers building, but its warhead failed to detonate. You see it here, right? So it did not explode. The fire on the upper floors was caused by fuel from missiles' tanks igniting. Had the warhead exploded, the entire building would have been obliterated. What's most terrifying is not just the near miss, but that Russian war criminals face no real consequences. Meanwhile, the morally bankrupt US leader's reaction so far has been nothing more than, quote, "I'm not thrilled with what's going on there," unquote. So they plan to obliterate the entire Ukrainian governmental building. Yes, it happened from Saturday to Sunday. Nobody would have been at work at night on the weekend, but they would have absolutely no place to go to work beginning Monday. Now, does this justify as a reason to strike Kremlin or Duma? Well, this now will be, I think, up to Zelensky. Now, Kremlin spokesperson said that no sanctions will force Russia to change its position. President Trump said yesterday that he's prepared to impose tougher sanctions on Russia for refusing to engage in peace talks. Seeing is believing. And we're not seeing. And you know what? We're not believing either. And this image here, tells you all that I want to tell you. And I'll let you figure it out. Now, meanwhile, Europe is rethinking its global partnerships. 3 years in. German Chancellor Merz urged European allies to actively seek new partnerships around the world. Quote, "We in Europe must adjust our interests without false nostalgia," unquote. Fantastic. Very, very late. Very, very delayed. Do more. I hope you tell us the bits and pieces, and you do way more in the background. Now, meanwhile, President Trump said yesterday that certain European leaders are headed to Washington, D.C., trying to convince him to impose sanctions. Remember, Macron was talking about it after coalition of the wailing called Trump. He sent them to hell, essentially. And Macron said, in 48 hours, we're going to put a coalition heading to Washington, D.C. That's exactly what's happening. Trump did not specify who that will be. Certainly not Merz. You see him having a totally different stance. Now, is it another pilgrimage to Washington, D.C. with gifts and gilded things? And maybe this time they're going to buy those caps and crosses and whatever is available at the Trump merch at that point. Take a stance. Talking about taking a stance, Hungarian Prime Minister Orban, pro-Kremlin guy who's part of EU, who's somehow blocking every single decision through veto. Europe is trying to minimize his, influence and power, but they talk a lot about it, but they haven't done it. So Orban said that after war, Ukraine would be divided into 3 parts: a Russian-controlled zone, a demilitarized zone, and a Western zone. And then he suggested that European leaders should be negotiating with Putin directly and not negotiating with the United States. Okay. Now, as to Poland, remember we talked about it September 3rd. There were 2 Russian drones that crossed into Polish area. And Poland came out with this interesting statement. They said, we didn't shoot it down because those did not pose a threat. And so they did not pose a threat to Poland, so they let them fly it all the way to bomb Ukrainian civilians. Thank you, I guess. Now let's talk about some quick news. This is national quick news. Now, after posting on social media that Chicago was about to find out why now it's called a Department of War, and he made war in all caps. Trump told reporters he simply wanted to clean up the city. One of the reporters, NBC White House correspondent, who is being harassed by Trump a lot. And this is one of those unfortunate episodes. And by the way, what is White House Correspondent Association for? Because I remember they sent out letters last year, literally a year ago, saying kudos to all the reporters because you hold Biden accountable. Meanwhile, they were waking up every morning asking Biden to somehow justify that he's alive. Are you dead yet? Is that a mask? Pull it, pull it, pull it. Is that a mask? Now they do absolutely nothing. Your reporter is being harassed. Your reporter, who pays dues to you. For what? Check it out. That's the exchange.
That, darling, that's fake news.
Well, why would you leave the Department of Defense?
Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
And you know what it does? Darling, listen. Second grade. You never listen. All what this does is greenlighting this behavior to every MAGA supporter, whether it is a teacher, a landlord, a medicine professor, or whoever, or doctor, whoever is in the position above you, your boss, your manager, whoever is in the position above you. This here shows that this is okay. Because this is their dear leader who gave them voice and identity. That's why they keep buying those hats. Without those hats, they can't recognize. I mean, there has to be an identity. Because see how far away they are from understanding when defining what success is. They're so far away from even MAGA women. I'm not even talking from the liberals, we just showed the stats, that they need it. And this here shows them that this is okay. This will have far bigger consequences than just a reporter being harassed. So, White House Correspondent Association, what the hell are you doing? Are you still there? You good? You still there? Where's your tongue? In the places that are exit only, or where? Now, speaking of RFK Jr. and places, his distrust of his own department, scientists and doctors has created turmoil inside U.S. public health agencies. Yeah, no Bruno. Okay, OpenAI is backing a feature-length, check it out, AI-generated animated film expected to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival in May. So they're working for over a year now on this AI-generated cartoon, essentially, that will be premiering alongside Disney and all this beautiful companies that soon to be replaced by AI, because now this is okay, apparently. Now, former President Joe Biden is preparing to launch fundraising for his presidential library, which is estimated to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, the Space Force plans to rename its Space Operations Command to Combat Forces Command to underscore its combat role. What are you combating in space, honey bunny? Your stuff explodes. Rather than traveling to the ISS that is about to fall anytime, where you headed? You wanted to go to the moon, to the Mars? You haven't done anything. What are you combating? As for now, Russia is just taking care of everything there. And throwing a lot of trash that damages your people in ISS. Have you seen those videos when astronauts do the moonwalk, and not moonwalk, but like the spacewalk type of thing? They're fixing something on the station, and there's so much trash flying around, this Russian thing, and and they just almost slams them. There's so many videos of that. It's nerve-wracking. Now the change, this renaming, is expected after the confirmation of new commander, Major General Gregory Gagnon. Now, you know how much it costs to rename Department of Defense into Department of War? Over $1 billion, because they're now changing the entire branding and everything. And legally, Department of War is just a nickname. It's same as, I would say, don't call me Olga, call me O. And I'll just change the whole shit to O. But when I travel, my passport would still say my full name. Like, what are you doing? Now, President Trump is expected to rewrite a 38-year-old arms control treaty to allow sales of sophisticated Reaper-style drones and other advanced systems abroad, according to U.S. official and multiple sources. So the stuff we're not supposed to sell others, because then they will become a very powerful threat to us, especially if they could be a seller to a third party. Now that'd be cool. That'd be fine. Speaking of rewriting treaties, remember last week I told you that on one day, I think it was Thursday or Friday, from 6 a.m, I got emails because I'm subscribed to any updates that essentially are done to the Department of State webpage. Same as for immigration and all that. So my inbox is full. But they were rewriting the treaties. And I went and I started reading and I'm like, you are rewriting this stuff. So then we found out that I posted it on Blue Sky and I did not put it in the newsletter. So Financial Times reported that EU countries have been notified by US DOS, Department of State, that the US is ending memorandums of understanding signed under the Biden administration to establish unified approach to identifying and exposing harmful information spread by foreign governments. And also, this is also defunded within the US. So we don't even know when anything hits our minds, right? Whether it is foreign propaganda, national propaganda, or whatever, right? So also what I saw is that they were amending the nuclear treaty with the UK. I see what they amended. I have to see if they can do it solely, unilaterally. So let me see before I report on that. Let me see if they can actually do it, because many things that this administration does have absolutely no legal basis. So analysts and lawmakers saw the U.S. must expand its weapons arsenal, alliances, and deterrence measures to counter China's military ambitions ahead of its now officially stated, 2027 readiness deadline to invade Taiwan. Okay, so some national news. Remember, DHS and ICE were raiding Hyundai, however you pronounce it, factory, and they took away 475 people. So now some details have emerged. Essentially, they were targeting, I think, 4 Hispanic workers, right? And one of them was hiding in the factory. She released the video. She spent hours literally hiding everywhere. It's a huge factory, the largest economic development project in Georgia, state of Georgia. So they were searching for 4 people, but more than 300 of those detained were South Korean nationals. And, Seoul said, well, it's very problematic for us to employ these people, because essentially it's a South Korean company. They want to have their professionals come to U.S., teach American workers, but also not teach American workers too much that they can be replaced. So essentially they bring their workers to produce stuff here. And then whatever is less important, that's what they hire Americans for, or any who are available in America. And so the one of those negotiators is essentially in Washington, D.C. now, talking about the immigration process, because they said that first they were negotiating about opening this largest economic development in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, which is very beneficial for America. It's investment, it's building the physical space, employing people and whatnot. Then Seoul said that we will bring our professionals. The whole factory does not employ just 475 people. This is just a tiny segment. And for those people, they asked for H-1B visas, which were denied by the US part. And so then they said, well, we were already opening the factory. We were already hiring everybody. We had to bring our professionals to work. So then they used B1, B2 visas, which are tourist visas, to allow them to come to US legally. But this has B1, B2 tourist visas have specific advisory on not to be employed while being there. So essentially, they, under the pretense of being a tourist, they entered the United States, but ended up working. So this is what South Korea is now negotiating. Now, South Korea and their experts have stated that this is a step in the back, especially since South Korea, a top U.S. investor, pledged $350 billion investment in July, or also South Korea's world's 10th largest economy and U.S. 6th largest trading partner. Trump on Truth Social said that I'm hereby calling on all foreign companies investing in the United States to please respect our nation's immigration laws. He also added, just hire Americans. But what he fails to understand or pretends to misunderstand is that we don't have that type of quality when it comes to workforce. So they have to bring their people. And also it's not in their interest to educate us here, essentially. Now, that's interesting. This was not publicized. Trump on Friday signed an executive order that allows him now to remove tariffs on certain goods from countries that strike deals with him. So essentially, he signed an executive order giving him complete freedom to use tariffs as a threat, set them, remove them, do whatever he wants without any announcement or explanation. So according to this executive order, eligible items include gold and other metals that would qualify for this threats and tariffs on qualifying goods could drop to zero beginning today. Today meaning Monday. To begin with, the tariffs have to be voted on by Congress. If you use national security for setting those tariffs, then it has nothing to do with gold. I mean, I would understand metal and like the state of the world we're in, but like gold and like diamonds, like what are you talking about? So just stating here. Now, as to new immigration crackdown, they expanded it now to Boston, targeting the arrest and deportation of undocumented individuals and criminal records. Now, we know that they kind of detained everybody based on skin color, accent, the language they speak, and the way they look. And now Supreme Court is overriding federal decisions, siding with ICE. And by the way, that what happened in Georgia, this was, when it comes to ICE, this was the single biggest operation by ICE in their 22-year-old history. So let's check the comments real quick. Hi, Irene. Hello. Great observation about green lighting. Thank you. Oh, hi, Brett. I said hi already. Department of War, DOW is the new acronym. Dow Chemicals is happy for the Brent report, right? And it's just so weird. And it's, what is it now? Hexit is SOW, like none of it makes sense. But anyway, now Treasury Secretary Bissent, of course, made this media run on Sunday. Every Sunday they go on channels and they speak and they praise the leader. So while he's golfing, this is normal for us at this point. Where Bissent was talking about tariffs, and if Supreme Court would decide against those tariffs, and he said, well, then now we have to offer partial rebates. We have to literally, he says, issue a refund on about half the tariffs, which would be terrible for Treasury. Now, what allowed you to set those tariffs in the first place? And then he hinted that, well, you know what? We think that Supreme Court will side with us. Now, on that, I agree. Unfortunately. Meanwhile, August jobs reports, as we found out last week, economy just added 22,000 jobs, while unemployment rose 4.3%, the highest in nearly 4 years compared to 2020 under Trump. Now, Quick global news. NATO Secretary General Rutte is headed to United Kingdom tomorrow. He will have bilateral meetings and will attend Ukraine Defense Contact Group session. This is the so-called Ramstein thing that at that point our Secretary of Defense Austin started. Oh, the good old times. Anyway, Israel expands Gaza assault. Israel escalated its preparations for a full-scale assault on Gaza City on September 5th, destroying a high-rise building that was a local landmark. Military spokesman said Israel now controls almost half the city. There was a shooting in Jerusalem. Gunmen killed at least 5 people in what Israeli authorities called a terrorist attack. Now, a drone strike by Houthi militia in Yemen forced the shutdown of southern Israeli airport. Israel's alert system failed to warn about the incoming assault. So it's a back and forth. Nobody's negotiating. Trump made the big hoopla yesterday, saying that it's my last warning to Hamas. And, but meanwhile, I keep reporting it every freaking day. Open any newsletter last week that Hamas said, and I'm not advocating for Hamas. Those are killers. Those are terrorists. But essentially, they said we're going to return everybody living and those deceased, the remains. We're going to return them to their families. And we're happy to negotiate with you. Right? They're at that stage. I mean, they're running out of money, support, diplomatic support, anything, right? So, and Israel says, no, they're pretending to do so. So we're just going to roll over Gaza. So with Trump yesterday claiming that, oh, he's going to push Hamas and Hamas will agree and I'll push them. They already agreed. Are you selling us something that already has been agreed upon? Like, what's happening? Probably. Now, as to Brazil, Bolsonaro, remember, he is facing a trial on the charges of this coup attempt. And his supporters, they went on the streets. They did a big protest in favor of him. And meanwhile, in Moldova, Russia is manipulating their elections. They're actively campaigning to sway elections in Moldova. Moldova is very important for them, not as a big country to take over or a country that would fight against Russia, but as expanding territory as to where to base their troops to further invade Europe. This is, something that would make sense for them. So they are heavily manipulating public opinion, news cycles, social media in Moldova. And meanwhile, U.S. cut the support for Moldova's efforts to counter Russian influence. As to China military infrastructure buildup, China is rapidly expanding air and naval infrastructure along its eastern coast, strengthening its readiness to potential conflict over Taiwan. They officially have stated that they're ready to do so by 2027. This is their deadline. Satellite images show the build-out could bolster Beijing's ability to invade the island, which it claims as its own territory. Now, as to global news, and let's stick with China for a little, Xi Jinping participated today in the BRICS summit. And just to paint the picture, this was, and they didn't plan to have this summit. This was virtual. This was called by Brazil, by Lula. Remember Brazil saying that, we cut every communication and diplomatic efforts with the United States because Trump is literally abusing us. He is failing on his agreements, yada, 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 right? So Brazil calls for an urgent BRICS summit virtually. Putin attends virtually. Everybody attends. Saudi Arabia, India. You got the point. Everybody attends this virtually overnight. When we went to bed, they woke up and did it, right? It's 12-hour difference. And there, Xi Jinping held this speech. It's a long speech, very straightforward for a Chinese leader or any Asian leader, because they usually use the diplomatic talk, so to speak. Now, he there declared that he's issuing a warning to fight against hegemonism, Do I pronounce it correctly? So anyway, to fight against the United States, unilateralism, and protectionism. She criticized ongoing trade and tariff wars started by a certain country as disruptive to the global economy and called on BRICS nations to defend multilateralism and strengthen cooperation. He urged building a community with shared future for humanity. Now, that's bullshit because they're sponsoring Russian war against Ukrainian civilians. So, humanity up you behind. But what happens here, this is very interesting, and some of you put that comment that the best propaganda is truth, right? So, Putin is a useful tool for Xi because I explained it to you last week and many times before. He's using Russia to destabilize Europe and the United States. And then Trump is a useful tool of Putin because he is gaining leverage in the eyes of Xi Jinping because he's controlling United States, the biggest enemy of China in one way more than the other. So, when it comes to economy, militarily as well, right? Technology. So in that regard, Putin is very useful for Xi Jinping. And then Putin is also using support of China to then conquer Europe, which again is only bringing benefits to China because Europe is also sinking economically, not competing with China. So US is destroying itself through Trump. Europe is drowning in the expanding war by Putin. So in this regard, she's winning. And then, he's putting actually the facts. So we meaning United States, under Trump started the trade war. We're bombing foreign nationals and claiming maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Who knows? We never spoke to them. They never got a chance to surrender. We're bombing Venezuelans, right? So we are causing all this shit show, for the lack of a better word. So he's stating the obvious. You can't fight against it. Now, who did manipulate it? I do believe that this whole idea with Venezuela comes from Russia because Russia and Putin personally holds the golden reserves of Venezuela because he helped Maduro to stay in power in 2019 by sending the Wagner Group. Remember Prigozhin, who was blown out of the sky? By sending Wagner Group to defend Maduro as he was literally losing to the opposition in Venezuela in 2019. Now, those gold reserves are preserved in St. Petersburg. So, if Trump would go onto Venezuela, Putin can then say, well, in return, if I got the kips, right, those golden reserves, maybe I can negotiate with Trump and he will be nice to you. He will not invade you. And meanwhile, he could have used the leverage on Trump saying, hey, you should invade Venezuela. You haven't won any war. Call yourself Department of War, grow some balls, go invade somebody, expand your territory. What's this little, effort? Like, they're sending all this drugs to you. Go fight them. I could imagine this. Now, this is my guesstimation, but I could imagine that this whole Venezuela story could come as an idea from Russia. Russia gains on it. This is just something that I could imagine. Again, this is not factual. This is something that I could imagine as to explain what the hell we're doing with Venezuela and near Venezuela. Okay, so let's get to facts now. Well, we've been talking about facts. I just derailed. Let's talk about Canada. So, Canadian Prime Minister Carney, last week, he did announce this comprehensive package to help Canadian workers, right? Let's recap real quick. Workforce training and income support, to issue $5 billion strategic response fund to help industries adapt and grow, to buy Canadian policy to strengthen domestic supply chains, liquidity relief for businesses facing global shocks, and $1 billion regional tariff response initiative, the so-called RTRI, to help small and medium-sized enterprises diversify markets and modernize operations. Now, he held the meeting today, and he was very upfront, and he said, look, U.S. is changing its trajectory, its stance, it's violating agreements. We do have the best agreement that U.S. has ever had with anybody up to this point. So we'll just let it be, but we need to focus on becoming the nation that is able and willing to expand our trade relationships with other people. Let's not focus on the United States. Let's count on us, expand our ability and strength, build out, and then sell to others and trade with others. Makes total sense, right? So then on Monday, today, at St. John's, Newfoundland, and Labrador, Carney confirmed that $80 million from RTRI, remember, Regional Tariff Response Initiative, will go directly to businesses in Atlantic Canada. The support is expected to help key sectors, including seafood, manufacturing, and steel, weather tariff pressures while protecting jobs and expanding opportunities at home and abroad. Here's a quote. Our core mission is building Canada's economic strength to create more certainty and prosperity for Canadians. Atlantic Canadians have built incredible industries that power the region and our country. As they face trade pressures and uncertainty, Canada's new government is making major investments that will enable those workers and businesses to bridge to the future and thrive in it. This was said by Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now, aside from doing the business work, he also did the sports work. Here we go. Something that no taco can do. Well, and I'll just read out this post. Mark Carney, our 60-year-old Canadian Prime Minister, casually and under the radar, just ran a trail race in Ontario. Out of 120 runners in the 26-kilometer race, Carney finished 58th with the time of just over 3 hours and 45 minutes. Attaboy. Must be nice, Canadians. Must be nice. Let's talk about France. French Prime Minister, now I'll butcher this name now, François Bayrou, yes, faces a confidence vote today, with far-right left and far-left parties pledging to oppose him. Bayrou is the country's fourth prime minister in just last 20 months. The vote centers on his unpopular proposal to sharply cut governmental spending. If rejected, France could see the appointment of new prime minister or snap legislative elections. As to Indonesia, they have a big shakeup. President Subianto dismissed the finance and security ministers after weeks of protest over economic inequality, which left 8 people dead. So the protests were not, fuzzy. It was very confrontational, and ultimately 8 people died. Demonstrators also now looted the finance minister's home, and this is a woman, and she has been in this post 14 out of 20 last years. So, as to resigning, Japan's Prime Minister Ishiba has resigned. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba announced his resignation after less than a year in office, following his party's loss of parliamentary majority in July. Now, they don't really mention that this is connected to negotiations with Trump. I've seen that delegation. I've seen those diplomats in Canada at the G7. I spoke to them. I was working through the night. They were working through the night. I saw the entire mood. I saw how they prepared for those negotiations. I saw how they physically were destroyed after, Trump bailed on them. Then he left. He didn't want to talk. Then they came to DC. They're very upset about this. For them, it's more about dignity than economic advantage. So, a few days ago, they did strike a deal with the United States where Japan agreed to invest more in American exports, up to $550 billion. Now, we don't know over how many years and what those investments would be. Maybe they, like EU, account all the private investments and commercial investments in it, probably. And in exchange, Trump would lower the tariffs to 15%. Now, Ishiba, he was giving a press conference. He was then confronted like, oh, were you quitting during negotiations? Where he said, quote, who would seriously negotiate if I were to say I'm quitting? So he says he did his best. Now he's resigning and letting somebody else do their best. Now, as to OPEC and the oil output, so 8 OPEC 2 countries agreed to raise joint production by 137,000 barrels per day starting in October. The move is aimed at increasing market share rather than propping up prices. Though actual 2025 output has lagged behind OPEC targets. So again, if the price changes and Trump claims it's his win, has nothing to do with him. As to Nepal, they banned 26 social media platforms, including WhatsApp, Instagram, WeChat, last Thursday. Now, they did ban TikTok in 2023. Then TikTok agreed to sign an agreement with the government and essentially be very transparent. They allowed for TikTok to continue, but essentially, I mean, all that negotiation took 9 months. But now, since Meta and who else is there? Instagram, WhatsApp is Meta, WeChat is China. They did not want to sign anything with the local government, then they are banned now. As to some business news, if you're an Apple fan, they are showing their iPhone 17, which will be on Tuesday, tomorrow. They will present iPhone 17 and iPhone 17 Air, which will be thinner, if you're looking for that. Bloomberg reports new Apple Watches and AirPods are also on the way, while foldable iPhone is unlikely before 2026. Also to look out for, inflation data will also come this week. So producer prices will be revealed on Wednesday and consumer price index on Thursday. Now, Federal Reserve is meeting on the 16th and 17th of September. Some are advocating for even half a point cut, but what we can expect is at least a quarter-point interest rate cut. And 6 companies are hitting or they're filing for IPO this week. This will be, remember the Winklevoss brothers who had the idea of Facebook and then Zuckerberg made it Facebook and all that? Yes. So they are filing for an IPO, or they have filed and they will be ringing the bell for their crypto exchange company called Gemini Space Station. And then Klarna, that's the company that allows you to pay later. It's a giant at this point. They're filing for an IPO, or they will be on the market. And then 4 other firms are slated to debut, hoping to replicate the strong IPO momentum seen by Bullish and Circle in recent months. Right? Okay, check the comments, and then we look in today in history. Michael said, Jared, didn't he run the Bank of England? Yes, Carney, Bank of Canada too, right? And also British Central Bank. Okay, so today in history, what's notable? Where do I have it? Where do I have it? Do I have it? I don't have it. Ooh, that's interesting. Anyway, today in 1974, Ford pardoned Nixon, granting him full, free, and absolute pardon to former President Richard Nixon for any crimes he committed while in office just 1 month into his own presidency. Now, I'm not advocating for Nixon's crimes, but Nixon's crimes are a warm-up for this White House, So 1504, Michelangelo's David was unveiled in Florence. 1565, the Spanish established St. Augustine, Florida, recognizing this as the first permanent European settlement in North America. In 1664, the Dutch surrendered New Amsterdam to the British, who then renamed it New York. 1900, a devastating hurricane struck Galveston, Texas, claiming an estimated 8,000 lives, making it the deadliest natural disaster in history. 1941, the siege of Leningrad began, which was the longest and deadliest one in World War II. 1957, the first Black athlete to win U.S. national championships, Althea Gibson. She won the championship. 1986, the Oprah Winfrey Show started. And, of course, 2022, the Queen Elizabeth II the longest reigning monarch in the United Kingdom, passed away, and her son, Charles III, ascended to the throne. Yes, and today we are observing International Literacy Day. Now, remember, I always show you something positive, right? Okay, so I call this now humanity. Okay, and I even put it in tonight's newsletter, or today's newsletter. So today I want to focus on this. Look how fun. So in upstate New York, a family farm has transformed its cornfield into a powerful tribute to Ukraine. At Kelder's farm, the corn maze isn't just art, it's a living symbol of solidarity. A portion of proceeds from visitors who visit the farm goes directly to humanitarian aid fund for Ukraine through the Ukrainian American Youth Foundation Hudson Valley chapter. And this is a beautiful reminder that kindness and support can grow anywhere. And you can visit Kelder's, Kelder's farm on Facebook, and you can visit it if you are in the area. And lastly, what I wanted to share, perhaps you've seen it, perhaps not, we finally started our Curating Culture project. And I just want to recap how it all began. So, you know, I'm a nerd and I'm boring, yes? So I go to museums and I speak to people and I get into conversations as to how are you doing? We're listening to what's happening to Smithsonian. We know what's happening to, museums of African American culture or African culture, to put this way. Like even the National Portrait Gallery, they're not just have less funds, they are now instructed to take down exhibitions, which altogether will just let us lose on the treasures that we do have, right? And that we have access to. Now, not everybody can travel to all the museums. Maybe you're not in the proximity, or you don't even have time to visit and just observe everything, right? So when I started speaking to bigger galleries, then I hear they receive less funds. And now, because of this DEI situation or anti-DEI war that Trump started, they're now instructed to take down exhibitions. Which then the problem for them is they're like, okay, well, then we have to find other countries maybe that would take our exhibitions to exhibit, literally, and will pay us something so we can stay in business, so to speak. And Europe is not greenlighting it. The only country willing to pay to buy or loan and exhibit these pieces of art and culture essentially is China. So in this regard, China is winning too. Then I started digging as to what's happening in European Union, because my point was Trump is demanding 5% of GDP to go into the defense budget, right? But if you think about Europe and you're familiar with the structure, they have the healthcare, they have, all types of, services. So they can't really pull those the way Trump is doing it here, right? You can't really do it in Europe. So where does this money come from? And so I started digging. It comes from art. So there are projects for youth. There are just culture and art projects and exhibitions are also being defunded to then serve this 5% GDP pledge for the NATO defense budget, essentially, right? So I started talking to all this, and what I come up with is to create this Curating Culture project where essentially I physically go to museums, I interview their directors, I show the exhibitions, we put this whole on film, we monetize it. This also, of course, presents the museums, and if somebody gets curious to travel or donate on their pages or support them, this would be wonderful for them because this adds to their budget and helps them to sustain. And we will also keep our treasures. Same for Europe as well. And then, of course, for honest, we have to bring this operation. And like if I'm in New York, I do it, I film it and I edit it. But then when it comes to Europe and Canada is on board and, different countries in Europe as well. So we're going to expand it. So altogether, put together this Curating Culture project. And now the first episode, just for you to physically realize what this is, I recorded at the Rarick Museum in New York. Now, this is a hidden museum in New York City on Upper West Side. I interviewed their director. I want to show you just 1 minute of, the way it begins. Essentially, it's just 59 seconds clip. The whole thing is 44 minutes. And why I chose them as the first, because perhaps you're not really familiar, but Nicholas Rarick, was born in St. Petersburg. His father was a lawyer. His family was very oriented for him to become a lawyer, which he did. But he was very fascinated with archaeology. And so as a little kid, he was going, this is Tsar Russia. We're not talking about, regimes yet. So he was going with archaeologists, and he saw that, the treasures that they were uncovering were so destroyed. So he started drawing them because they didn't have photography at that time. This was 1890 something. So he started drawing, and his style was to draw very fast, to just depict almost like photography-like images of what they were discovering. And so then he becomes a lawyer. He then, the Bolsheviks start the war or the takeover, and he leaves Russia and never returns. And so he left for London and Paris. He then helped Stravinsky when he put this ballet together. He did the decorations, became popular in that regard. He was the elite. Then he traveled to Himalayas. He was very much into yoga. He was a mystic. He was very much into, exploring what religion is, not organized religion as he called it, but really what the belief is. He explored all kinds of religions. He went to China. He went to Tibet. He went to ultimately New York, United States. He lived here for 3 years. And at that moment, he realized that we need a peace act where countries would pledge to protect cultural treasures in the moments of war. And so he worked with 20 countries. He worked on that for decades. And ultimately, President Roosevelt signed it into law in 1935. And this is a Rarick Pact, and he created this symbol for it. It's 3 red dots. He called it like Red Cross for Culture. The red dots are representing science, art, and religion, which now is more spirituality because that's what he was really into. And 20 countries signed to preserve culture, which then later became the foundation for UNESCO, for The Hague, and all those industries and institutions that are now in charge of preserving culture. So as a lawyer, he literally put the text for it. So that's why for me it was interesting to begin this series with him, because he had the idea to preserve culture. So stick with me. I'll show you a 50-second clip as to how this video begins. And if you are intrigued and interesting, please watch the episode, because this will help not just us, but ultimately the museums. Okay, take a look. Welcome to Curating Culture. Today we are in New York City, not in the busy Midtown, but rather in quiet elegance of the Upper West Side, where a remarkable hidden treasure awaits, the Nicholas Rarick Museum. Nicholas Rarick was a visionary painter, philosopher, lawyer, humanitarian, and even a mystic whose art and ideas transcended borders and time. His vibrant works captured the majesty of nature and the spirit of peace, and his legacy continues to inspire through the Rarick Pact, a groundbreaking treaty protecting cultural heritage. Today, we'll step inside his world, and we're fortunate to be guided by Guido Trepsa, the museum's director, who will graciously share the treasures and the stories of this remarkable place. Skyman's Follies. Thank you, nerd. No boring. No, thank you. I found my fellow nerds. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Oh, you watched it. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So if you have 44 minutes through the time, just watch it, please. And if you want to be part of it, so we did this Curating Culture project. If you want to be part of it, of course, we're self-funding it. we can feature your names if you have business and whatnot. So if you're interested in that, interested in supporting, please visit honestnetwork.com/cc for curating culture, and you can see how you can become part of it. I think this is important. We're not doing it. I'm not doing it for me or even for you. I'm doing it for those who will come after, because when we lose the culture and the treasures that we do have access to, we will not suffer, but those who come after us will, because they will lose access to it. So that's the main intention behind it. So if you can watch the video and then explore, if you have ability and are willing to support, that would be fantastic. But altogether, thank you for being here. I'll be live tomorrow at 5 p.m. What did we just get? Let me see. Steel deal. U.S. Steel is shutting down a mill in Illinois this November, but 800 workers will keep their jobs for now, thanks to agreement the company reached with Trump administration. The deal included job protections and production guarantees. So this is another type of bullshit. They will keep their jobs, but they're shutting down U.S. Steel mill in Illinois. So you sold it to Japanese, who will shut it down. And now just because there is a job protection, they will still get salary. So what's going to happen in a year? Anyway, I just wanted to finish on a good note, and then I saw the news. Anyway, thank you, Jared. Thank you, Skyman's Follies. Very cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brett, Irene, everybody who commented. See you tomorrow. Please read the newsletter, share it. Truth matters, facts matter. Keep your head on a swivel. Stay safe and stay sane. Okay? See you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern.